Good morning. So yesterday we discussed Kadesh, sanctification, the first step of the 15 steps of the Seder. What's the second step? After Kiddush, after we make the blessing over the wine, or Chatz, we go and wash our hands. Now, normally when we wash our hands, it's because we're about to eat the bread. Or, as we will do later in the Seder meal, we'll wash our hands in preparation for eating the matzah. But here we wash our hands and then we go to the third step, which is dipping the vegetable in the salt water. And the question is, why do we wash our hands if we're not eating matzah? And the answer is that in Judaism, after holiness, after Kadesh, after sanctification, what follows next is wash your hands. You see, many people, when they think about holiness and spirituality, they think about meditation, they think about spiritual endeavors, holy endeavors that involve the mind and the heart primarily. But Judaism says no. You know what holiness is? Holiness is action-oriented. Holiness is when you lift your hands, you cleanse your hands, you elevate your hands, you purify your hands to do a good deed. Because there's nothing holier and more spiritual in Judaism than your actions, your good deeds. Many times when people find themselves in some kind of confinement, whether it's emotional or psychological or spiritual, and they're looking for the key to get out of their spiritual confinement or enslavement or addiction or whatever it may be, which is the message of Passover. How do you set yourself free? They think about, what can I read? What can I study? Can I pray? Can I meditate my way out of it? And Judaism says the surest way out of anything that imprisons you in life is get up and do something good. And do something good for someone else. And that will bring you the joy in life. That will bring you the fulfillment. That will bring you the liberation that you seek in your life. Indeed, the very first story the Torah tells us about Moses, the liberator of the Jewish people, the one who went on to bring the Torah down from heaven and give it to the Jewish people and humanity, the one who became the greatest teacher in all of Jewish history, Moshe Rabbeinu. The first recorded story in the book of Exodus was when he leaves the palace and he sees an Egyptian striking a Jew. And Moses looks this way and looks that way. Vayifen kol v'cho. And he sees there's no one standing up for this poor Jew who's being beaten. And what does he do? He stands up and strikes down the Egyptian who is beating the Jew. And by telling us this very first opening scene of the story of Moses, the Torah is telling us is that to find freedom in Judaism is to step up and say, if no one else is doing anything, that means I must act. I'm being called to do whatever is needed, because if no one else is doing it, that means it's my purpose, my mission. And instead of looking around and saying, well, no one else cares, why should I care? Moses says, if no one else cares, that's precisely why I must care. We all continue to watch in horror, with disbelief, what is going on in Ukraine. A month and a half after the war broke out, the poor people of Ukraine and the Jewish communities are being ravaged by the Russian army and by the invasion. And we know that millions of people fled Ukraine and Jewish communities have been uprooted. And one of those cities is Odessa, Ukraine. And one of the rabbis there, the Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Wolf, has run an orphanage there for decades. And he had to lift himself up with his family and 120 orphans. And he fled to Berlin, Germany, ironically of all places, that is now hosting him and his family and 120 orphans. But just a day before Rabbi Wolf and his family departed from Ukraine on an arduous travel journey to get out of the country and make their way to Germany, a couple arrived at the door of the orphanage and said, Rabbi, we have this new baby girl. She was born 6 days ago. With the war, we don't know how we're going to raise her, how we're going to protect her. We have enough to worry about. Here, we want to give up this baby girl. And they handed Rabbi Wolf and his wife a 6-day-old baby girl. And Rabbi Wolf said, we will take responsibility for her if you cannot. And as he fled with his family and 120 orphans, they took along this 6-day-old infant child who is now living with them and the 120 orphans in Germany, waiting to go to Israel. That's what a Jew does. A Jew says the first thing after holiness, after Kadesh, after sanctification is wash your hands. Get ready to take actions, because our actions lead the way. And ultimately, our mind and our heart will follow suit. Have a wonderful day.